Hey guys, what is going on? It's Adam, and I'm back with a brand new episode of Living in Denver. And this one is going to be really exciting for any of you that are on the fence about maybe whether or not Denver is the right place for you, or hopefully you've already decided that much, but you're just not sure where in Denver might be your next home, what the next best spot is to consider moving to. So in this video, I'm actually sharing some of my favorite local hotspots, as well as what I've been hearing from a lot of my other friends, family members, and even clients that are also moving here to Denver, and just sharing with you guys today what my 5 top Denver neighborhoods are for you to consider. So with all that being said, let's get started. All right, you guys. So as I said, today's going to be all about my 5 favorite local neighborhoods, spots that I definitely think are worth checking out. Before we get started, really quick, all that info down below, feel free to reach out. I'd love to connect with you guys. Even if you're not that serious about moving right now, it's still a great opportunity for me to share a little bit more about what might help you make that decision easier. So make sure you guys go ahead and do that. But let's go ahead and get started. Again, all about these 5 local favorite spots. So right off the bat, I'm going to share with you number 1, Wheat Ridge. So Wheat Ridge has a long history in my personal life. It's actually where I spent all of my childhood. Went to Wheat Ridge High School, spent a lot of time just throughout my childhood years in Wheat Ridge. And at the time, I didn't really think of it as any specific special place other than just a great, place for me and my family to call home. But man, I tell you what, as I get older, I really have admired and really appreciated Wheat Ridge more and more, and definitely think it's only going to get better. So I wanted to start it off with number 1 with Wheat Ridge, just because I do think it is one of the best places to consider in 2025 and beyond. So we're going to talk about a few different things with all 5 of these neighborhoods, and I'm going to keep this consistent just so you'll have the ability to kind of compare and contrast each of these and hopefully find a few things with each of these 5 neighborhoods that maybe are worth considering on your end. So the first thing I want to talk about is just its location. So Wheat Ridge is about 5 miles to the west of downtown Denver. It's about a 25 to 30-minute drive to Denver International Airport. And this is definitely one of the reasons why I think Wheat Ridge is phenomenal is its location. So if you look at Denver on a map, obviously you have neighborhoods and areas on all 4 sides of downtown Denver. But what I personally love is any of the neighborhoods that are to the west of downtown Denver. And that's because you're limited in geography, you're limited in land between the mountains to the west and the city, downtown Denver, to the east. Since you have these 2 boundaries, you're very finite, you're limited in land, and only so much can be built into the future. And I love that from a real estate perspective because that's an example of supply and demand or scarcity. And since it's the scarcity type location into the future, this is only going to become even more and more and more popular, which is going to increase your home prices. So a great spot for appreciation. I also love, if you are somebody that maybe likes to get up to the mountains on a regular basis, how Wheat Ridge is located on that western side of town. And this is something a lot of my clients and just friends that move out to Denver don't realize until they're actually out here living, that man, if you do like to get up to the mountains, just having that ease and that accessibility by being on the western side of town, it makes such a difference. In fact, I'd even argue that it's such a difference that it will be the deal breaker in a lot of cases where, if you're on the fence, should we go up to the mountains this afternoon after work, maybe go for a hike? Yeah, but we're gonna get stuck in traffic, or it's gonna take us an hour just to get up to Evergreen. Those are the types of questions or things, considerations that you're gonna have if you are in different areas in Denver. And when you're in Wheat Ridge and on this western side of town, it's just so much easier, so much closer that it's a no-brainer. Instead of that hour-long commute maybe to get up after work to the mountains from like Aurora or maybe out up north like Thornton or Northglenn, when you're in Wheat Ridge, it's literally you jump on the highway and in 5 or 10 minutes, you could be in places that are already in the foothills and have some great options for hiking and just outdoor activities. One of my favorites is Red Rocks Amphitheater. Red Rocks isn't only a great spot to go for concerts, it's in fact an awesome place to go for hiking, great mountain biking. It's such a unique landscape for photography, videography, just creating very cool, unique pictures and videos with the red rocks and just all of the beautiful just landscape in that area. So just an example of when you are on this western side of town, how much more you can get done when it comes to outdoor activities. So when it comes to what people love most about Wheat Ridge, that's what I would say is probably at the top of the list. But in addition to that, I will share with you that, Wheat Ridge is a very older type neighborhood. And not only in the homes, the age of the homes, but also just the people, the population of the residents in Wheat Ridge. In my opinion, I think they are kind of the baby boomer or the age of homeowners that maybe are to the point now where they're considering downsizing. Maybe they're even considering assisted living or going into retirement type communities. And because of that, there's a great opportunity right now in Wheat Ridge to find fixer-uppers and different types of value-add properties that might currently be in its original condition, and just, some homes that need a little TLC, need a little bit of updating. And nowadays in Denver, the cat's out of the bag. So many people are moving here and love living here in Denver that it's harder and harder to find these types of properties. And I think Wheat Ridge is one of my favorite spots to identify these just because of the age of a lot of the homeowners and just the potential. A lot of good opportunities. So that's a little local tip for you. The median home price in Wheat Ridge last month, so May of 2025, was right at about $640,000. There's definitely a range though. You could find some homes as well as a lot of attached homes, meaning apartments, condominiums. You can find quite a few more reasonably priced options in Wheat Ridge, especially if you're pushing it a little bit more to the east, where it's closer to the downtown Denver side of Wheat Ridge. There's definitely some areas that I think are, nicer than others in Wheat Ridge, but overall, I just think it's a great spot to check out, especially if you're interested in getting up to get outdoors and enjoy some of those outdoor activities, as well as you just want that spot that's that much closer for accessibility to the mountains, as well as even just other parts around town. I-70 and I-25 are very close and easy to access when you live in Wheat Ridge. So really anywhere you need to go in town, it's pretty easy when you live on the western side in a place like Wheat Ridge. Now, as far as maybe some negatives or cons, things that maybe people don't like that much about Wheat Ridge, I'd say what tops the list there is there's very limited nightlife. There are some great restaurants, but not quite as many as a lot of the other more trendy and hip areas around town. So if that's really important to you, Wheat Ridge might not be the best spot, but I will also argue that it's so close to some of these amazing spots that are packed full of great nightlife and dining and going out to bars, all that kind of stuff. There's so much very close to Wheat Ridge, especially if you go just a little bit to the east and go to areas like Edgewater, Sloan Lake, and Highlands. West Highlands, also known as Lower Highlands, is definitely one of the spots that have always been at the top of the list for really cool, trendy restaurants. There's a few Michelin star restaurants even in this area now, and just a ton of options. So if that's really important to you, it's, maybe a 5 or 10 minute ride with an Uber, or just hop in your car and you'll be there in 10 minutes. So not a big deal. All right, so now let's just jump right into number 2. So my second favorite neighborhood that I think is definitely worth considering is actually like almost the same thing as Wheat Ridge, but it's not. So I'm gonna include it as its own standalone neighborhood here, and that's gonna be Applewood. So Applewood is located just to the west of Wheat Ridge. Kind of a better way to describe it might be it's right in between Wheat Ridge and Golden. So Applewood is definitely one of these areas that over the last decade has incredibly grown in popularity and just awareness. I always thought when I was graduating out of college and started visiting this Applewood area again on a more regular basis, just coming home to visit the family, that kind of stuff, I was just always amazed at how special of an area Applewood was and how it really was one of these, hidden gems, kind of one of these secret spots in town. And man, I just think that secret's out. So many people know about it at this point, but it still is, I think, an awesome place to consider. Now, the location's great. Very similar to Wheat Ridge as far as you've got immediate direct access to I-70. It's a very quick drive if you want to go up skiing or just get up to the foothills and enjoy a late afternoon hike, anything like that. But also what I love about Applewood is it is super close to Golden. And if you haven't checked out downtown Golden recently, definitely go back and check it out because it has just continually gotten better every single year. There's so many cool restaurants, local bars, a lot of these new kind of like outdoor breweries where you can usually bring your dog, pets are allowed outside, and it's basically this brewery type setup, but then all of these cool food trucks and vendors that are serving food there 7 days a week. It's like more of a permanent type setup. And it's just an awesome spot, especially if you've got a big group and everybody has their own kind of tastes and what they like to eat and drink. You know, when you go to a place like this, everybody kind of pays on their own and, you know, gets to have exactly what they want since you have all these different options. But also, Applewood is growing significantly right now because of Lutheran Hospital. So Lutheran Hospital for a long time actually was located in Wheat Ridge, really close to where I grew up, just basically across the street. And it's been there for, I don't know how long, maybe 40 or 50 years, if not longer. But just in the past 2 or 3 years, they finally finished the new Lutheran Hospital, which is located right here in Applewood. And it's right off of I-70 with direct access to a ton of restaurants and different types of shopping, and also Lifetime Fitness, which is this massive new fitness center that they built. In fact, it's, I think, one of the largest in the state. And I was watching it get built and I could not believe how massive this building was, and almost thought, you know, they're never going to have this place get filled up and at occupancy. And I'll tell you what, every time I drive by there, that parking lot is completely full and they are packed. So there's a lot of, you know, just people in this area at this point that are, you know, there for a reason, because it's an awesome place to live. And just to kind of share some of that comparison with each of these 5 neighborhoods, for its location, it's a little bit further away to the Denver International Airport from Wheat Ridge, maybe 5 minutes longer. So it's at about 30 minutes, maybe 35. And as far as to downtown Denver, it's about 8 to 10 miles just due west of downtown Denver. Definitely a little bit higher when it comes to median home prices. As of this past month in June of 2025, we're looking right at about $870,000. I do also want to point out though that this is a much smaller area. So the comps, or the comparable homes that these median home prices are being based off of, is a very limited pool of homes, since it's not that big of an area with a ton of inventory. So 1 or 2 really high-priced homes that sell could dramatically change that median home price. So don't let that number maybe scare you if that's pushing the high or maybe even above what your budget is. I think it's still worth checking out, because Applewood does have some little pockets of homes that are a little bit more on the reasonable price point, maybe $550,000 to $700,000. I know that's still a lot of money, but just to kind of put it in comparison to, you know, that almost $900,000 median home price average. The last thing I'll share about Applewood before moving on is back to its location. If you are somebody that is big into cycling, there are a ton of great trails in this Applewood area. There's also a really nice paved trail along Clear Creek, and you can actually take this all the way, I don't even know where it dead ends, but you could basically take this paved concrete trail all the way from Applewood going further west to Golden, or you could take it the other direction and go all the way to downtown Denver, and then even go from there all the way down south to as far as Cherry Creek Reservoir. So if you're a cyclist and you just like to get lots of mileage in and you don't want to get stuck on roads where you're having to constantly stop for stoplights, this is some really good cycling and just biking options if you are on this western side of town in Golden, Wheat Ridge, and Applewood. All right, so now I want to share with you guys the 3rd local spot. Hopefully you guys like those first 2, because this one, we're going to go a totally different direction. We're actually going to head down southeast of Denver in an area called South Shore. So South Shore is in Aurora, and I love this area. I actually have a listing right now that I'm helping some friends and clients sell their house, which is in South Shore. So I've spent a lot of time over the last month down here, and man, every time I'm over in South Shore, I just love it more and more, and can see why it is becoming a very popular area, and an area that I think is only going to continue to get better. As far as location goes, it's about 15 miles to the southeast of downtown Denver, and to the airport, it's actually a little bit quicker than these first 2 neighborhoods I shared. And that's because you have the ability to take a tollway known as E470, which can dramatically help your time of how long it takes to get to the airport. I'd say if you're taking E470, it could be about a 20-minute commute, maybe 25. But it could be even a little bit quicker than that, depending on how fast you drive. I've noticed, man, these interstate tollway roads like E470, if you're not going 90 miles an hour and you're in the left lane, you're gonna get honked at and told to move over, just because people are going faster than that on this tollway. So I haven't gotten a speeding ticket yet, but it doesn't seem like they're patrolled that much. So if you guys have a little bit of a lead foot, it's a good option for you. But talking a little bit more about South Shore and why I think it's definitely a great spot and definitely one of the spots that locals are really gravitating towards just because of the amenities and some of these awesome features actually in the South Shore community. So South Shore, it's a master plan community similar to some of the others around town that I've shared on past episodes, similar to Grant Ranch in Littleton or maybe even Highlands Ranch. So a master plan community just means that it was very intentionally built with tons of trail systems, and just all of the homes are newer. I'd say the majority of homes in South Shore are built after 2010. And what I love is how there's multiple clubhouses. And one of the clubhouses, I thought this was super cool, actually has a brewery, or not a brewery, I should say. It's a bar in the clubhouse where any resident in South Shore can go there and receive up to 2 free glasses of beer a day as a resident. And they cycle through different seasonal beers, and it's just a very social, very cool, hip, just different type of homeowner association. And when I'm talking about that cool feature like the beer, but also how they have multiple clubhouses, fitness centers, really nice swimming pools. There's also a private fishing lake with a boathouse. All of this stuff I'm talking about, you must think, man, this is probably a very expensive homeowner association. The monthly fees are gonna be really high. Well, one of the other cool things about South Shore, it's actually the opposite. I couldn't believe it, but the HOA monthly fees have actually just recently gone down from about $135 a month down to only like $35 a month. So very, very, very reasonable and low considering all that you get, all these great amenities. So just another thing that I thought was really cool that I learned about recently while I'm helping my clients sell their home. So South Shore does have quite a diverse range of home prices. Home prices can really vary anywhere from about $600,000 to $900,000. And I will say that the $900,000 can even get pushed up to well above $1 million for some of the more custom homes, especially in the neighboring communities like Talon's Ranch. But South Shore also has some very nice homes, and I think the ones that are at the higher end of this price point are going to be a little bit better location where it's closer to Aurora Reservoir and also a little bit better views looking out west to the mountains. When I'm talking a little bit more about location, it is really convenient to get to the airport, but if you are just going to downtown Denver, or if you're just needing to, go around town, this can take a bit longer just because of some of the side streets you're gonna have to take where you're not able to take the tollway. And I've been taking this drive on a weekly basis recently, and I've been testing out different routes. And certain times of day you can definitely get stuck in traffic, and what could have been a 30-minute drive all of a sudden turns into a 50 or maybe even an hour-long drive. So that's how it goes in Denver as well as most major cities. But just to kind of keep that in mind, I'd say that's probably one of the negatives or the considerations for people to think about and be aware of, is just that depending on where you need to go, since this already is in the southeast corner of Denver, if you got to go all the way up north, it can be quite the drive. So just be aware of that. But if you work remotely, or if you're just able to time it where you're not going at peak driving times with a lot of other people on the road, I wouldn't worry about it too much. You'll be okay. All right, now we're gonna move into number 4, and number 4 is gonna be Arvada. So Arvada is awesome. I think Arvada is another spot that is kind of overlooked by a lot of people, and that's because Arvada has really this diverse range of styles of homes, age of homes, and just, what's available. Let me talk through that a little bit more now with a specific example. So a lot of Arvada is what's called unincorporated Jefferson County. And when you're in an area that's unincorporated, what that usually means is that there are a lot less restrictions, lower taxes, and a mixed use of properties. So in other areas around Denver that are in incorporated areas, usually you'll have a lot more restrictions on what the home can be used for. As an example, you can't usually work from home with a shop or anything where you're actually having that address be your business, where you're having people come to the house for business. A little bit more restrictions in most places around town, but in Arvada, in the unincorporated portion, you can work from home and have a shop, have that kind of stuff available and be legal and able to do that. It's great if that's what you do. However, if you aren't a homeowner that wants to have that type of availability in your home for work, this might actually be a negative, because you might have that neighbor across the street that has a workshop that's making a lot of noise or there's a lot of traffic coming and going. So there can be pros and cons to that. But another thing that makes an unincorporated area really nice is it usually has a significantly lower tax rate. So that's a great perk of Arvada, depending on where you're looking. But another few things about Arvada that I want to share with you. First off is the location. So Arvada is actually located just north of downtown Denver and a little bit to the west. So if you're looking at Wheat Ridge, Applewood, Golden, these are all areas that are pretty close to Arvada. Arvada is just a little bit to the north of those. And I love the views specifically of Arvada if you are on that western side. So if you live in an area like Stanley Lake, or maybe in some of the newer communities like Layden Rock, you just have these awesome views of the western slope, the Front Range of mountains. You can even look up further north and see Boulder's Flatirons. It just has a very unique perspective of all of the western slope, and also actually some great views of downtown Denver. In places like Layden Rock, as an example, since you're up on a little bit of an elevated area where all the homes are, you can actually have some of these views that just look at a perfect, unobstructed view of downtown Denver. Some awesome spot to watch fireworks in the summertime. Just really pretty to see some of the storms rolling into town. I just love homes that have great views where you can really see a long distance and a really expansive view. And definitely some of the homes in Arvada are some of the best when it comes to that. Since there is a significant range of types of homes, as I mentioned, the median home price this past month was at about $650,000, so a little bit lower than Applewood and kind of right in that same range as Wheat Ridge. What I also love though about if you are in this Arvada area and maybe you're somebody that likes to go up to Boulder, you have a really convenient back way to get to Boulder off of Highway 93. And I grew up, like I said, in Wheat Ridge, and my parents still lived in that area when I went to college at CU Boulder, go Buffs. And I would constantly, be driving to and from my parents' house and up to school. I lived in Boulder, but, still go home and do laundry and just, occasionally visit them every few weeks. And this is always the route that I would take on Highway 93, just because you avoid all of the busy, congested highways, and it's just a lot prettier of a drive, in my opinion, as well. It's only a one lane each direction highway, so a little bit sketchy at nighttime, and it can get pretty windy at times. So there are a few things that, sometimes it's not the best road to take, but overall, I just think that's another nice perk of Arvada is you have really easy direct access to Boulder, only about a 15 to 20 minute drive. And you also have that same distance if you want to go a little bit to the southwest and hit I-70 and go up to the mountains. So just a really good overall location, great views, pretty good mix of homes. I just think Arvada, it's a win-win, lots of great options and reasons that might be worth considering. All right, and then last but not least, number 5 is going to be Littleton. Littleton is where I now currently reside and live, and I love it down here. I never thought I would live in Littleton. I always thought I'd stay a little bit more to the northwest in places like Golden, Applewood, Wheat Ridge. But man, I am super happy being down in Littleton, and for reasons that I didn't really even think about until I got down here. And I'm in Grant Ranch. It's a master plan community, and I love just how much open space, private trails that are almost always completely empty, and just a lot of space just to kind of unwind and relax after a long day at work. As Denver continues to get busier and busier, and just the entire world has more and more people, I feel like it's harder to find these places to really just kind of be by yourself and enjoy just some peace and quiet. And with Littleton, and especially in some of these master plan communities, you just have a lot of options when it comes to finding open space and finding areas just to kind of get out and enjoy being out in Mother Nature and, relaxing a bit. So talking a little bit more though about location, Littleton is located south of downtown Denver, and it's a little bit to the west, depending on what parts of Littleton you're considering. But it's only about a 25 to 30 minute drive to downtown Denver. It's about the same distance as South Shore. South Shore might be a few minutes longer. It's just a little bit different location for how you're getting to downtown Denver. And if you're trying to get up to the airport, this is going to be a little bit longer of a commute. I'd say this is going to be more about a 45-minute drive. So the longest of all 5 of these areas that I'm sharing with you today. but I wouldn't let that deter you too much. I think it's still very reasonable. You know, it's not so long that you don't want to go flying. So it's really not that bad. And you can still take that E470 for part of the way just to avoid some of the traffic and that congestion. What people like most about Littleton, quite a few things to list off, but the one I'll share with you is how Littleton has an awesome downtown. It's considered the historic old downtown of Littleton, and tons of locally owned and operated businesses. Just one kind of a main street that you walk up and down, and pretty much every business on the street is a local business. Lots of just people that recognize you and say hi, are very friendly. Some of my favorite restaurants are in this area, one of them being Palenque. It's a Mexican style Latin fusion type restaurant, but what's really cool is it actually has one of the largest mezcal collections in the entire state. I'd even argue it probably has one of the biggest in the nation. And we're talking a book, a menu that has probably 10 or 15 pages of mezcal to try. So if you guys like tequila, mezcal, definitely check out Palenque. It's a great spot. So the median home price in Littleton this past month in June of 2025 was kind of in that same range as Arvada, about $650,000. Definitely a very, very wide range of homes though in Littleton. New build communities like Sterling Ranch, but also some of these older homes in areas like Governor's Ranch, and all have great options. So regardless if you're considering a newer home or an older home, there's definitely a lot to choose from. I'd say though that Littleton does not have quite as much condos and apartments to choose from. So if you're considering more of an apartment type living scenario, I would suggest to maybe look a little bit closer to downtown Denver, just going into a little bit more of the urban environments. Out in Littleton, I just feel like there aren't quite as many options. So if that's important to you, definitely consider some of those spots. But just overall, I love Littleton and definitely happy that I'm here. And that's why I wanted to keep it and save the best for last as my number 5 locals favorite spot here in Denver. All right, so there you have it. 5 of the best neighborhoods in 2025 here in Denver from myself, 40+ year Colorado Denver native, as well as a lot of my friends and family that have also kind of voiced their same opinion on some of these spots being the best and the great spots for you guys to check out. If you guys have any questions at all, feel free to reach out. I'd love to connect with you. As always, all that info down below. Reach out via email, phone, whatever's most convenient. I'd love to connect with you guys. Guaranteed there's some value that I can provide, even if you're not considering moving for any time in the near future. And last but not least, every single month I'm hosting these live, free, online masterclasses. It goes through everything you need to know from A to Z on buying a home in Denver, Colorado. And we talk through all kinds of stuff that's very relevant in today's current market. I also host these with one of my best friends who's one of the top lenders in the entire state. His name's Ben Adams. So we really just hit it from all angles and just really have a goal every single webinar to really provide as much as we possibly can for you guys to make that educated, informed decision when the time comes. So really excited to hopefully see you guys on the next one. If you want to get your free ticket, just go to webinar.adamsillsdenver.com and grab a ticket there. But with that, I'm gonna close this one out. Look forward to seeing you guys next week on a brand new episode of Living in Denver. I'll see you then. Bye.